Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the selection of appropriate methods based on age characteristics. So in today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is method and the types of the methods, for example, direct way method, grammar translation method, audiolingual method, Suggested method, the silent way, and the final one is total physical language learning. So what is method? Methods means a procedure. It is technique. It is a set of rules employed in an activity to approach the problems of truth and knowledge. The concepts of method probably came from the Greek philosopher Socrates in around 469–399 BC. According to the research, linguists have demonstrated that there is not one single best method for everyone in all contexts. Also, there is no teaching method is inherently superior to the others. Besides, it's not always possible or appropriate to apply the same methodology to all learners who have different ages, different objectives, different environments, and learning needs. As a teacher, I have been asked a lot of times by my students, "Oh teacher, you have years of experience in teaching languages, so do you have or do you recommend any best version of methods?" So my question is that no, I can't answer to the question because there is no single method that can be best or that can best fit to your needs. Because it all depends on the students, their age, most importantly their objectives, probably their learning environments and learning needs. So you may ask me how we can choose the best methods according to our needs and wants, right? So let's see that what kind of factors do we consider when we are selecting an instructional method. Effective teaching is a speculative quality of a good teacher, which can only be achieved by adopting appropriate method of teaching, considering the students, the intended specific outcome, or the purpose. Because we must decide what is our purpose and why we are learning the language and what the exact method is the best to our needs and wants. Probably the second reason is going to be the size of the group. Imagine that your group consists of more than 20 students, or imagine that your students is 40 plus group members. That means you're going to be selective and choose the most appropriate methods to your group size. So learners' preferences for learning. Why? Because some learners are divided and have been mentioned about they are kind of visual learners, or else they are the people who really want to communicate with their teachers. That means you gotta take the learners' preferences when you are teaching a language. So the content sometimes dictated the method itself. Imagine that you are teaching the content of teaching English to the doctors. So how can you teach the English to the doctors? That means you're gonna take the content into account. Your content is teaching teachers or let's say the doctors about the doctoral things. It could be the content of the doctors required tools, can be equipment, and it can be the procedure of teaching, or they can just use the language when they are doing the operation, or probably they can just use the language to communicate with the other people all around the world. And you can see that required preparation also very important. And why? Imagine you have limited time. You have 2 months of preparation for learning language. Here, the most handy method is communicative language teaching, because in the very short period of time, imagine you are going to abroad and you need to communicate with the foreigners. Therefore, you must communicate and speak to them in the target language. Therefore, your teacher must use the communicative language teaching to improve your language, or at least she or he might give the gist of the language itself. Probably it can be the daily talk, daily conversation, or daily use of language. And as a teacher, I just say that teaching has different, let's say, the definition. So my definition for teaching is like two definitions I can give. Teaching, I guess, is like fishing, because you use different lures for different learners, or to use different lures for different fish. That means, imagine you're gonna just catch the salmon. So you can use worm or you can use any insects, but imagine you're gonna just have the whale in your lure. So can you just attract them by just offering the worms? Unfortunately, no. You can use something that is bigger, probably something that is bigger fish or sort of something. So then they can come to your lure. Another thing is that you're gonna use different methods for different learners. Not all learners are interested in one field and one way of teaching methods. Probably one could be much more challenging and the second could be the most interesting one, and therefore you're gonna use different methods for different learners. As I mentioned above, it depends on your learners' needs, their wants, especially their interests. And the second thing is that teaching is like beautiful music. Why? As you can imagine that their instructional methods are the same instruments, because they are the methods, so we can just give the definition them as the same instruments. Imagine you are playing along the instruments and they make like sound, a little sound, specific sounds. Imagine when you played together, like all the instruments in tune, in rhythm, in feeling, and they will become amazing music. That means like with just using only one sound or sounds, you cannot make the rhythm, you cannot make the feeling in the tune, and therefore you're gonna play all the necessary instruments together so that they will become amazing music. So moving to the first method that I want to talk about today, it is direct way method. In this very special method, teaching is done entirely in the target language, and the learners are not allowed to use their mother tongue. Mostly grammar rules are avoided, and there is a great emphasis on developing or perfect pronunciation. So you may ask me, why not grammar? Because the direct way method is mostly focused on using 100% the target language. You are using the English all the time. Can you use beginner, direct way method for the beginners? Imagine the beginner level students are here next to you and you are all the time speaking in English. Imagine your target language is English. So can they understand you? Unfortunately, no. Why? Because you are speaking in the totally different language and they have no idea about it. That one. Even for the elementary and pre-intermediate students, using the direct way method can be a little bit complicated or challenging for them to understand and to just get the main gist of what you are saying. So therefore, using the direct way methods, I would highly recommend you to use this method with mostly intermediate, upper intermediate, and advanced and the higher level students, with the higher level students. Why? Because you can just talk to them only English, only the target language, because in this very method you are not allowed to give the translation. They must understand you when you are using the English itself. By using and learning these very special methods, your learners can learn new vocabularies and they can connect through they can learn the concepts through pantomiming, use of like real life objects and visual aids and sort of things. So oral training also helps a lot in reading and writing. So you may ask me, like, why not just using the direct way method with young learners? Probably you can use a direct way method, but as I have mentioned here, you need real life objects. Just imagine like you are teaching first grade students, and when you are teaching them, you have a very specific topic, that is fruit or vegetables. When you are teaching them the fruit or vegetables topic, you can use the plastic fruit. You can bring the plastic fruit. You can show them what is this, like it is an apple, and they will just show and they will see the apple and they will talk to you about it. That means they're just seeing the real object, therefore there is no need for translation. Or else imagine that you are bringing a real items, real objects. Imagine you are teaching the fruit topic and you are bringing real fruit, an apple. So you're gonna show them real apple, they're gonna just see them, and then they will do understand what you're saying, and you will say them, what is this? It is an apple, and then the job is very well done. So moving to the reading and writing skills, you may ask me, so you are just giving the direct way method only for speaking, so why not other skills? Yeah, of course you can use it in writing and reading also too, because if they all the time speaks and think in English itself, know their mother tongue, and they do understand what they are reading and what they are writing, they will have broader skills, broader opinions about what they are writing and what they are reading. So there are sort of activities that I can just recommend to you to use with your classroom. It could be the conversation practice. So students are given an opportunity to ask questions from other students and the teacher. For example, teachers might have the very first, the welcoming or introduction lesson with their students, and the teacher may let the students to talk to them, to ask them sort of random questions about their life, about their career, whatsoever. And then they're gonna speak to them in English, and that is very well done job, because they're gonna just speak in English and they will have the answers in English. And the next one is the self-correction activities, like how we can do them. So self-correction activities, it's gonna be done when a student makes a mistake and the teacher offers and then a second chance by giving another choice or another chance. Why? Because if you all the time help students to correct themselves, just let them, give them a little bit time to speak or to think for themselves. Sometimes I just wonder why the teacher all the time do the spoon feeding, all the time teaching them when their students make mistakes. So don't teach them, just wait a little bit and let them correct the mistakes they have done. So if you just give the chance of self-correction, your students gonna improve a lot, and they will improve their correction skills, and the most importantly, the self-corrections. And the second name could be self-evaluation. They can just self-evaluate themselves what kind of mistakes they are doing, and by doing what they can improve their language, and by doing what they can move to the second or the next level. The last could be the question and answer exercises. As a teacher and as a mentor, I use mostly this kind of activities with my higher level students, the question and answer exercises. The teacher asks us questions of any type, and the students respond to the questions, and they are more than welcome to make mistakes. No judgments. Remember, no judgments. If you all the time judge your students, they will have kind of lack of self-confidence, and they think that their teacher is gonna just make the corrections, or their teacher is gonna find sort of mistakes, and therefore they try to avoid to express themselves, and that is the biggest mistake that you are doing as a teacher. And moving to the next one is the grammar translation methods. I do want to mention about this one. Why? Because when you are talking about the grammar translation method, or if you say that I am the grammar translation method user teacher, I would say that you are a little bit traditional teacher, not the modern one. Why? Because the grammar translation is becoming a thing of the past. Nowadays, we are not like using the grammar translation methods, because the grammar translation method focuses on only grammar, but unfortunately neglects the four main skills. Those are speaking, writing, reading, and listening. In the grammar translation method, learning is largely by translation to inform the target language, because you're going to translate the texts in the target language to your own mother tongue. And the grammar rules are to be memorized, and long lists of vocabulary learned by heart. You know what? I don't think there is a merry point that learning only rules, because in life nobody asks you, do you know this rule? When do we use this? When do we use this? They don't ask you. They will ask you, can you speak in English? Or can you just talk like, what is this in English? As if they're gonna ask you sort of questions, but not what is present simple. When do we use it? And what is the signal words for the present simple? Nobody is gonna ask. So there is little or no emphasis placed on developing oral ability. As a teacher, I work not only the Pedagogical University, but also I work in Mastery Language Center. In this very international school, I teach the students from the General English to the SAFER and IELTS courses. So from my own ability or from my own experience, I can say that there are lots of students come to me and they will ask, or they just ask for help. Oh, teacher, I have learned the grammar for years, but unfortunately I'm not able to speak, I'm not able to express myself, and I'm too shy to express myself. And why? But the main problem is that their teacher used the grammar translation method to teach the English to them, and that is the main point here. So to develop oral ability, I don't think that the grammar translation is best for you. If you are going to use this very methods, use with the applicants they are preparing for entering the universities, and if they have limited time to enter or to apply for the universities. Otherwise, please don't do this. Just rather to use the other method is much better than the grammar translation method. This method focuses on reading and writing and has developed techniques when the facilitated more or less learning of the reading and writing only. As a result, speaking and listening are overlooked. That is the main reason why the students who has learned the English by just grammar translation method has no any speaking and listening ability at all. So moving to the activities, I can suggest you the read and translate literacy passages. So if you use it, read and listen, translate passages, learners are asked to translate a literacy passage or literary passage, and then they translate the target language into their own native languages. So this helps to improve or provide a stimulus for learning vocabulary and learning grammar in the context. Reading comprehension questions also can be the best. So reading comprehension questions, there are lots of types. You can just include multiple choice questions, true false questions, like true false not given questions, and sort of. Learners answer the questions in the target language based on the reading text and on the student's own experiences related to the text. So another could be fill in the blanks exercises. Learners are given sentences or the passages with more words missing, and then they will just do the gap filling, and they help them to understand the main gist of the context itself. The next one could be memorization practice. Learners are given a list of words with a native language equivalent, and they are asked to memorize them. So there are lots of advantages and at the same time disadvantages of each method. So this method also has a little bit drawbacks. So it could be self-esteem. Self-esteem is all about emotional well-being and self-image. Self-efficacy, a belief in your own capabilities to successfully perform a task. It has been said by Brown 2014, and you can just see and read about this one. So in this very method, students develop and they will have low self-esteem due to poor speaking and listening skills in both age groups. Doesn't matter you are teaching the youngsters, doesn't matter you are teaching the teens, adults, or middle-age and higher age groups, because imagine they do know and they do understand what you're saying and what you're talking to them, but unfortunately they can't answer back to you. Why? Because they will have the loss of esteem. They are not just practicing and speaking and listening, and therefore they think that they are not good enough to speak, and they will do lots of or make lots of mistakes, and therefore they will have loss of esteem. That is the most the drawbacks of this very language methods. So another let's say the advantages of this method, I could say that when you use a grammar translation methods, your students do understand what is the grammar itself, and probably there are some students who doesn't understand the grammar even in the context, so teach them, help them by using the grammar translation method, but if it is necessary, try to use more. So the grammar translation methods, we talked about this one, and you can just ask any questions in the comment section. And the next one is audiolingual methods. So my students and my colleagues sometimes ask me about to use some sort of methods with youngsters and adults, and here is one. The audiolingual methods, like learning a language, means that acquiring habits. So acquiring habits. There is much practice of dialogues of every situations. A new language is first heard and extensively drilled before being seen in its written form. So in this very method, if someone talks to, and I will say that is like parrot method, because your teacher drills it and tells one word, or let's say that one grammar rule, and you repeat after them. By doing so, you can use this audiolingual method in the classroom. And drills and patterns practice are typical in this very methods. It has been done by the Richards in 1986. So in this very special methods, repetition, the most important one, because the student repeats an utterances as soon as he hears it, and it could be just moving to the replacement. One word is replaced by another one. So audiolingual method is mostly for teaching the youngsters, because imagine that you are teaching the vocabulary and you are teaching one grammar rule or a grammar topic or sort of anything, and you can use the grammar translation method by asking your students to repeat after you. You can just ask them repeat after me. You will say that an apple, it is olma, apple, olma, and they will repeat after you. By repeating after you, you can just drill and you can teach your students. You can use this very method with the kindergarten students and kindergarten learners in the primary education schools. But I don't think that using this kind of method with adults is very interesting, because imagine that you are teaching higher education students, imagine that advanced learners, and your students are at the age of 20 plus. And you are saying them just repeat after me, for example, utterance, and will they repeat after you? Unfortunately, no. Why? Because they can repeat after you once, twice, 3 times, and the 4th times, and they will get bored and they will say, oh my god, we're not kidding anymore, we're not gonna repeat after you anymore, and they will do so. So to teach this kind of methods, or to use this kind of methods, please try to use it with mostly youngsters. So disadvantages of these methods. Audiolingual method works best with youngsters, as I mentioned it, and at the same time it's gonna be too monotonous for adult learners, because it doesn't pay sufficient attention to communicative competence. It is mostly teacher-dominated method because teacher is being like in the center of the attention, and teacher asking or like telling a word, and the students and the learners are repeating after the teacher. That means they have learning the English with their unconscious minds. To make it the conscious mind, try to not to use this method, because your students is gonna have unconscious mind to understand what you're saying. And the learner is in a very passive role, and learners have little control over their learning, because teacher is like, on the main contact here, and the students are all the time repeating after them. Only language form is considered while meaning is neglected, because when your teacher asking you to repeat after them and you are not paying attention what you are saying and what is the real meaning of what you are saying, and therefore the meaning is a little bit neglected here. Equal importance is not given to for all skills here. Probably when you are repeating or doing something, you are not communicating very much, and you are not just communicating with this each student, right, equally. And it's kind of mechanical method, since it demands pattern practice, drilling and memorization over functional learning and organic usage. Autolingual methods, very popular in 1970s, and it was called army method itself, because the main thing was just drilling and repeating after the teacher. So autolingual methods can be best with youngsters, but not highly recommended with olders, let's say adults and higher level learners. So talking about the the next method, it's gonna be Suggested method. Suggested method can be my all-time favorite, because by using Suggested method, you can just let your students relax somehow in a little bit. When I am doing my master's degree, my foreign teachers and native teachers all the time use Suggestipedia, and it makes me just calm more, and it helps me to relieve my pressure, my anxiety, my stress in the classroom, because I wasn't all the time open to everything, and I wasn't being very dominant in the classroom, and therefore I had a little bit self-esteem, a little bit low self-esteem, and therefore my teachers used to a lot this very method, and therefore I love it very much. This Suggestipedia method was just introduced by Georgy Lazanov in 1970 by a Bulgarian psychiatrist. I'm mentioning it as he was psychiatrist. So this very method helps to promote positive suggestion and helps students to become independent and confident to use the second language without any feeling of nervousness, any feeling of anxiety. In this very method, you're gonna use music and comfortable and relaxing atmosphere. I'm again mentioning it's gonna be comfortable and relaxing environments. Even in my classroom, I use this very method quite often. How? Before my students come to my classroom, I to put the classic music as in background music, and it's going to be a little bit soothing for my students. And we're gonna talk, we're gonna discuss, and we're gonna I'm gonna explain the topic, and we're gonna do everything in the classroom, but using the classic music at the background, and they will have much more and enthusiastic. They're gonna be more enthusiastic about my lesson, and they're gonna at the same time they're gonna learn, and they're gonna relax. And therefore the main points of using Suggestipedia is relieving your students' nervousness and anxiety in the classroom. It's not all the time using music in the classroom, but also Suggestipedia means that giving students freedom. What it is, Giving students freedom means that imagine that I am teaching adult learners and I am having a topic about the foreign writers, about their favorite writer, and then I can take my old students from the classroom and we can visit the library and I can use the library books like kind of a live lesson. I'm gonna use the library and the books itself to my students to explain the new topic, because they're gonna go there, they're gonna visit there, they're gonna touch the books, they're gonna read the books, and they're gonna find what is their interests in them, and even they will have the chance of reading and choosing very good book for themselves to read. And when it comes to the youngsters, even the kindergarten, you can use this very method. How and when? Imagine your students are, or let's say the kindergarten pupils, all the time sitting in one place, no movement, and sitting only on their chairs. Don't they tired in the classroom? They do so. They will get tired sometimes. They can just, do different postures in the classroom. Why? They will get tired. So let them to sit on the couch, or let them to sit on the carpet at least. And you're gonna just teach them something like new for them, but not sitting on the table. Just give them a little bit freedom of doing or having kind of relaxing atmosphere in the classroom. So that is called Suggestopedia. Or else, sometimes I use with my own students too. Imagine there is frozen cold outside and you are sitting in the very cold room, classroom. So your students are getting very cold, and what you're gonna do? Just use a Suggestopedia. Ask them or just take them to a cafe and get a cup of coffee with them, and after having the cup of coffee, just discuss your topic. At least do the revision lessons, so that you can help them to relax a little bit and to have a little bit comfortable atmosphere in this very chilling, cold, freezing atmosphere or the weather. So advantages of using the Suggestopedia means that, as I mentioned, it reduces stress and makes students feel more comfortable and relaxed at the classroom, and they will have lower classroom anxiety. They will not have any classroom anxiety if you just put the classic music in the background. Sometimes students come to the classroom and they will have sort of anxiety, and they will start thinking, oh my god, the teacher is gonna ask this and ask this homework, this and that homework, that. Why you should start asking homework? I mean, you should start your lesson by asking homework. Let them relax a little bit, let them having a little bit freedom for themselves, and then they will come and visit your classroom willingly. At the same time, everybody is going to participate in your classroom. So the next could be that language learning comes more effective than any other methods. So memorization in learning through Suggestopedia would be exaggerated by up to 25 times over than in conventional learning methods. Conventional learning methods. So you can use the Suggestopedia method, and you're gonna be adored and loved by your students if you do so. Doesn't matter they are young, doesn't matter they are adults and plus middle-aged, doesn't matter, just use this method. But unfortunately, each method has their own advantages at the same time disadvantages. So disadvantages of using this very method: some can find classic music boring and irritating than stimulating, because in the Suggestopedia classroom you are not allowed to use pop music, jazz music, or any other very giving energy giving music. Just use classic music and calm music to relax, and therefore not all your students gonna like classic music in the classroom. Sometimes they'll get bored, sometimes they just want to sleep, sometimes they're gonna sing their own personal problems and whatsoever. So the next could be exaggeration of rhythm, maybe like, perceive it odd, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit illogical. There might be, very like, physical. So therefore, environmental irritations you might have. What kind of environmental limitations? Imagine you work at school, you are a teacher, and you are just using Sagittarius. Imagine you really want to take your students out of the classroom, but unfortunately, there are sort of rules that in your school, or like let's say in your like very specific education center or education fields, that you are not allowed to bring your students out of the classroom. Because probably there are cameras in the classroom, they are watching you, and you might interfere the other students, and therefore sort of environmental limitations you might probably have. Imagine you are putting classical music, and at the same time there are teachers, they are teaching the other students the other subjects, and you are interfering them. Even the high school, we have sort of cameras, and sometimes we need to take the permission from the authority to take the students out of the classroom and do whatever we want, unfortunately, and at the same time, fortunately. So that is environmental limitation that you might have by using this method in the classroom. And the last one could be the concentration problems, because if you use the Sagittarius, your students may not have very full concentration. Why? Because in the classroom, students are listening to you. At the same time, there is a classic music on the background. Like how it is possible your students can listen to you at the same time to the music, and therefore they might have a little bit low concentration problems, or they might have nearly lost focus in the classroom. So in this, when it comes to the Sagittarius, I wouldn't recommend to the young learners using the Sagittarius. Why? Imagine you are taking your students out of the classroom today, and the next day you are taking your students out of the classroom, and you are just using the Sagittarius, you are putting using the classic music in your 2 lessons. But when it comes to the 3rd lesson, they will do ask you to take them out of the classroom again and again, because there is a little bit exaggeration for young learners. They will constantly ask you, "Oh teacher, why don't we go out? Oh teacher, why don't we sit there? Oh teacher, why don't we have a cup of coffee with you there?" So, and do discussing about the topic. So you see, there is a point that means you're not all the time can do this, that in the classroom. So for the Sagittarius activities, I can recommend the learning which is focused on relaxation through music. As I mentioned again, classic music, and speaking, which is focused on dialogues mostly to improve communication. And it could be the role plays, it could be the ordering, and whatsoever. And the next could be that the very famous game or activity is bingo games, vocabulary games, and any other sort of. And the next could be question and answer sessions, like you are using the classic music at the same time you are asking questions from your students, and they are answering to your questions. The last one could be repetition and translation. Your students are gonna repeat after you, and they're gonna translate what you're saying, and they're gonna translate what they are given to translate. So I highly recommend using the Sagittarius classroom if your students are telling that you are having very boring classroom. Don't always be a traditional teacher to use, or to just teach them using all the time grammar translation method or else audiolingual method. Try to use tranquility. Try to enlighten your students by using rich sources of methods. That could be the Sagittarius. So the next one is the silent way method. What it is? Sometimes doesn't matter you are an old teacher, doesn't matter you are a young teacher, you want to keep the silent in the classroom. If you have the students with a lot of numbers, with a lot of students, so So you can use the silent methods. So the aim of this method is that teachers are to say as little as possible in order that the learner can be in the control of what he wants to say. But unfortunately, no use is made of the mother tongue in the silent way. You're gonna just give them activities, sort of like passages, and they're gonna just be the silent, and they're gonna be silent in the classroom. They're gonna talk and they're gonna talk to them, and they're gonna do everything individually and but in groups, but they're gonna stay silent as much as possible. As the name implies, silence is a key tool of the teacher in the silent way. From the beginning of the lesson till the end, students do 90% or more of talking, not the teacher. For example, in the classroom, being silent moves the focus of the classroom from the teacher to the students and can encourage the cooperation among them. Probably you might ask your students to teach themselves, and you're gonna keep silent till your students gonna talk, and that means that you're silent, moving to the students, and students silent can move to you. So advantages of using the silent way method: silence can be used to help students correct their own errors. Not always teachers should do the corrections. Let the students to do the corrections all by themselves, because teachers can remain silent when a student makes some mistakes, to give them time to self-correction, and helps the students with their pronunciation, and by mouthing words without vocalizing, and by using certain hand gestures. So a silent way classroom also makes extensive use of poor corrections. So students are encouraged to help their classmates when they have trouble with any particular feature of the language. Because as a teacher, unfortunately, we teachers try to help our students all the time, not letting them do any corrections for themselves. We're gonna do all the time, sit next to them, ask them to do anything, but unfortunately it's not gonna work here. Just give the freedom for your own students, let them do the correction for themselves, and then they will just understand the particular feature of the language, and they will understand that what thing could be good, what thing is not good in their own sphere. The silent way method also has sort of drawbacks, because when you use the silent way method, it may feel a little bit strange and scary to some students. Imagine that your students come into your classroom for the very first time, and you are all the time keeping silent. You are not giving any further explanation. You are not talking to them. You are asking them to, your students to understand themselves, to understand by themselves, and that means there is no any explanation. And therefore, your students might have sort of problems to understand what you're saying, to understand what is going on in the classroom, because without adequate explanation or the preparations, they might be unsure of how to handle it, especially in the very beginning. So if they will get used to using the silent way method, it might be okay, but if it is vice versa, I wouldn't recommend it, because it might be challenging for some students. Why and how and which students? Imagine your learners have some sort of learners with special needs or needs. So how? Imagine your students has poor vision side, and that means you're gonna ask them do whatever they want, and they don't have the ability to see the whiteboard, and then what will happen? So they will not understand what you're talking about. They will not understand the whole procedure, and therefore you get a help to these learners with special needs. It's not about all the time physical problems. Sometimes your students might be needed in the mental help. How and why? Sometimes students might have mental health Probably they might have sort of dysfunctional abilities. They may not be probably think or have poor skills to think for themselves or to have their critical thinking, unfortunately, and they will not understand one thing at one time. So therefore, if you have sort of learners with special needs, your help is necessary, so you cannot use this silent way method with them. And the next one is them students are needed in the extra coaching, because they will understand something a bit late comparing to the others. Sometimes your students need to further explanation, because doesn't matter your learners are intermediate or upper intermediate learner. In their even the upper intermediate learners, probably you have their level is the same in the imagine in one classroom you might have 30 students in the classroom, and the 30 students level is upper intermediate. But unfortunately, even though their level is the same with the 30 students, there are some skills that might be different. For example, one of your students' speaking skill could be C1 level, and the second student's writing level could be B1. That means your learners needed extra coaching, because in explanation of one or two things, they need further coaching if their level is a little bit lower than the other. And the students might feel that they are not getting enough feedback from the teacher and from the others, because in the silent way students are gonna do the work, and students gonna understand or get the main gist of the topic. But unfortunately, there is no any very visible role of the teacher. So if example could be that there is no use of verbal and written feedback in the classroom. Imagine you are a teacher in the classroom and your students are doing the most of the job in the classroom, and you are not giving any oral or verbal feedback. That means you're not speaking to them and you're not giving any written feedback, and therefore they will probably have the problems with sort of their drawbacks in terms of speaking, in terms of everything. Well, in this very method, progress may look different than with other methods, because it might feel like students spend much time in learning basics of vocabulary in the pronunciation rather than progressing quickly through these topics. They will have low self-esteem that they are not making any progress at all. Probably it is not very visible for them. In what very specific skill or sub-skill of the English they have lack of knowledge, because as a teacher it's your duty to give the feedback on time or the in time. I don't know, probably you're gonna give the oral feedback or written feedback, but do it on time. So when it comes to the teaching materials, and I can just talk about the Cuisinart routes or the sound color charts, word charts, or vital charts to use in the classroom. Moving to the next method that is very much loved and much used method that's in my classroom, that is communicative language teaching. So communicative language teaching is aimed at making communicative comprehension the goal of language teaching and developing procedures for the teaching of 4 language skills. They are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The communicative language teaching provides learners with the opportunities to use their language or English for communication purposes. Learning to use English and learning by doing. If you use communicative language teaching, your students will improve their speaking skills, oral skills. By doing so, they will have more self-esteem for themselves, because they are able to use what they have learned and they can implement what they are learning in the classroom. Communicative language teaching could be use it in both with youngsters and the elders, and it can be handy with in all level of English, because only just by communicating with your students you can help them to learn and to use what they have learned in your own classroom. When it comes to the activities, I can give the survey as an example. In the survey, you will ask your, the students to talk to their classmates or to ask your peers about their interests, about their hobbies. For example, they might have asked some sort of random questions such as, what do you think of your very first, female singer? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And their learners are gonna say that, your learners are gonna say that, I like let's say the Selena Gomez, and I like blah blah sort of. And then moving to the questionnaire. In the questionnaire, you can use the peer work, and your students are asked and answered the questions. Just give your own answers. Can you sing a song? No, very well. How about you? Can you sing a song? Like, you can ask sort of random questions, they're gonna answer, they're gonna just work in pairs, and they do help. I mean, these activities do help your students and learners to make a very visible progress in their oral skill. The next one could be the role play. Why? Because by doing role play activities, your students noticeable progress, and they will see the noticeable progress in their classroom. They're gonna do the role play. For example, one could be in the role of the teacher, and the second could be in the role of the students, and one could read something in the role of the lion, and the second could be reading in the role of the ants, and that is called a role play, and that helps them to drill what they have learned, that helps them to speak more fluently in the classroom and out of the classroom. And the next could be information gaps, and the most importantly, interviews. Let them to take interviews, but ask the interviews to take the interviews from the higher level students, because they are able to ask those questions, and they will have the ability to do the interviewing with each other. And the last one could be the textbooks, because by using the textbooks, they can just do very much more communicative progress. In the classroom, teachers shouldn't correct students' grammatical mistakes when you are using communicative language teaching, because if you all the time focus on the grammatical mistakes, and they will have sort of a little bit self-esteem. They think that, oh my god, I'm gonna talk because my teacher is gonna make corrections in terms of my mistakes, and now my teacher is gonna be very upset if I use incorrect grammatical mistakes. And therefore, please don't try to correct while your students are talking. Just give them some time to talk to them and to speak about one specific topic, and after the conversation is over, and you can just do sort of corrections with your students. This communicative language teaching focuses only on the topic of communication in order to increase the students' confidence. And abbreviation form of the communicative language teaching, you can say CLT, and this CLT improves fluency but neglects accuracy. What does this mean? What does it mean? So accuracy means that speaking without any mistakes. Could be grammatical mistakes, it could be word choice and everything. But the fluency means that speaking non-stop. That means being able to fluent and expressing themselves in this very target language without stopping and doing sort of self-corrections. So therefore, CLT might help them to improve their fluency, but unfortunately it interferes to improve their accuracy skills. And the next one is total physical response. One of the greatest methods to use among young learners. Total physical response is called TPR, and total physical response works by having the learners respond to the simple commands such as stand up, close your book, go to the window and open it, sleep, take your book, close your back, and sort of. That means giving the commands to your students. The oral comprehension is very essential. That can be, this TPR can be used to teach and practice many things. Vocabulary connected with actions. For example, you will ask your students, smile, chop, headache, or tenses, for example, past tenses, present tenses, future tenses, and continuous aspects. For example, they will do the practicing like this. Every morning I do laundry. Every morning I make my bed. Every morning I talk to my dad, sort of. And the next one could be imperatives or instructions. Imperatives. You can give orders like imperatives. Stand up. Close your books. Go home. Read. There are the imperatives. What about instructions? Instruction, like for example, imagine that you are in a cookery classroom and you are teaching how to cook an Napoleon or sort of, and then you will give the instruction like, do first of all do this, do that, next you're gonna do that. That means giving the instructions, so you can use these very methods. The last could be that storytelling. They can do the storytelling. Probably it is one of the best one here. Why? Because by telling stories and retelling stories, I improved my speaking skill a lot. They helped me very, very much. So I highly recommend to storytelling to improve the learner's speaking skills. So advantages of the TPR is that it's a lot of fun. Students enjoy it, and it can be a real theory in the classroom. It lifts the peace, or it lifts the mood of your students, because they are just moving and they are doing not only mental but also physical effort in the classroom. That helps them to just understand what you're saying much more. So it is very good for the kinesthetic learners who need to be active in the classroom all the time, and it is very good for the kinesthetic learners who need to be active and who used to in the large or small classes. So you can use this very methods in not only in the large but also small classrooms. It doesn't really matter how many students you have, as long as you are prepared to take the lead, students will follow, and therefore you are just more than welcome to use these very methods. So by concluding this total physical method, the TPR, I can say that you can use this very special method not only with youngsters but also with adult learners, because it doesn't matter their age is old or young, they do enjoy in the classroom if they just do the physical responses in the classroom, and they will help them to concentrate and to get involved in the classroom much more than you expected. So we have seen a lot of activities, we have talked about different methods with you today. So just learn these methods, and I hope at least one or two will come in handy in your own teaching career and working with your students. If you have any further questions in terms of what I said or what I mentioned here today, if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to just write it and ask in the comment section. Thank you so much.